In today's video I want to go over my Hailey build. Me and Mr. Kuta have been testing between different modules and components. Before I get into it I want to go over a few points. So for this build we're mainly focusing on the fourth, and we're not doing anything with the second. Obviously you can use the second if you want, but we're mainly focusing on the fourth. Now to go over the skills, CRYO round, whenever you use this it applies CRYO stacks to an enemy, and it goes up to 9 stacks. And when the CRYO is applied, the enemy will take an additional 50% damage. But whenever we hit an enemy with the fourth, it's going to lose 1 stack of CRYO, but the maximum stacks of CRYO is not required to achieve the highest damage. It just simply allows you to hit the enemy 9 times before you lose the 50% increase. Storm Snare, this applies CRYO stacks as well, and this allows the enemy to obviously take 50% more damage as well. This Storm Snare only scales off of skill power, so the more skill power you have, the more damage you'll deal. So instead of Walk a Tightrope, you'd obviously want Dangerous Ambush, and you could switch Conditional Recharge for health. Cold Fury, basically, when you have max stacks of Cold Fury, Hailey becomes immune to knockdowns. At max stacks, you also gain the firearm critical hit damage and skill critical hit damage of 20% each, and that's at the bottom. However, you lose 3 stacks whenever you roll or grapple. This decreases the stacks. And whenever you use the skill, you gain stacks every second, up to the maximum of 16. Each stack gives 2.5 for skill critical hit rate and the firearm critical hit rate. So 2.5 times 16 will give you plus 40%. And then obviously you lose your movement speed, which doesn't really matter, but you lose 40% movement speed. Then for Zenith, this deals the base damage of your weapon that's equipped. Firearm attack mods obviously further increase this damage, as well as critical hit damage and weak point damage mods. Skill power also increases the damage of the fourth, so you have to find a balance between firearm attack and skill power. The default number of bullets is 4, but you can increase this with magazine size on your weapon. The weapon stats that you can roll on the weapon also increase your damage, and whenever you hit a weak point on an enemy, you recover 15% MP. And then your passive, which is Safe Strategic Retreat. When you're 25 meters away or more, you'll receive a 50% increase to weak point damage, but this damage decreases as you get closer to the target. You can actually check when you're 25 meters away by scoping in with your weapon. You can see that there's a meter icon on the right, and you have to be 25 meters away to deal the additional damage. You can also see at the bottom, next to the fourth ability, you see the Safe Strategic Retreat icon, and whenever I move closer, this decreases, but whenever I move away, it begins to fill up. So to gain the full benefits of this, you have to be 25 meters away. However, if you're more than 55 meters away, you'll also be losing damage, so you have to be between 25 and 55, as you have the effective range drop off. The 25 meter range doesn't matter for the second skill, as the damage doesn't increase unless you're scoped in. As you can see, the icon is not lit up. Also, firearm attack, magazine size, crit rate, crit damage, and weak point damage all affect the fourth skill. So on your weapon you're going to want to have action and reaction and rifling reinforcement for the firearm attack. Better insight for the crit rate, so you can get 100% crit rate. Concentration priority for the firearm critical hit damage. Focus fire for the plus 20% and the critical hit damage plus 3.5. Then for magazine size, you want the concentrate support ammo, as it gives you the firearm critical hit damage. Then you want more magazine size, so they expand the weapon charge. Then better concentration for the firearm critical hit damage. And then you want the 2 weak point damages, so you can have weak point damage from a weak point sight, and then you can have special sight, or you can have weak point expansion. I would only recommend you use weak point expansion if the boss dies within 4 shots, as this only gives you plus 140 for the first shot. But if you're firing more than 4 shots, special sight will be better overall, as it's plus 30, and since you're able to shoot 7 shots, that's 210% over 140. This also has a 10-second cooldown, whereas I can just keep firing shots on the special sight. Also when testing this, chill skill power is the better one. I tested between maximize skill and chill skill power, but you'll experience diminishing returns from certain mods if you don't spread out your damage. Shot focus also increases your damage, so the skill power modifier doesn't matter. We're wanting the plus 15% firearm attack, as this increases the fourth. And then for walk on a tightrope, we gain plus 30%. This also increases the fourth, but we need our HP to be 50% or lower. The way that we do this is with conditional recharge. So whenever we use a skill, we lose health, 17.5% of max HP. I'm only using this as I don't want to remove my components every single time I'm loading into a fight. If you do want to remove your components to lower your health, you can also take increased health. But for the build, this is what I'd recommend. If you're going to be playing on the 4th, you can go for Skill Insight for the critical hit rate, Emergency Measures for critical hit rate and critical hit damage, Front Lines for critical hit damage and skill critical hit rate, and then obviously Skill Concentration for skill critical hit damage as well. You have Chill Specialist for the chill skill power, Shot Focus for the firearm attack, Spear and Shield for the plus 8.1 skill power, Glacial Sanctum for this chill skill power plus 10.2, and then Conditional Recharge and Walk on a Tightrope, or you'd switch it for Dangerous Ambush if you're going to be going for skill power if you want to play on the 2nd. Now, my character has 15% critical hit rate, and my weapon has 53.2. Whenever I use my 3rd, I'll be getting my Cold Fury stacks. This will then allow me to have the crit rate of 100% and crit rate of 100%. Another thing that you see is that again the Arche Pacemaker. This is one of the abilities that you can get from the inversion reinforcement skills. So whenever your movement speed is 300 or less, this grants Arche Pacemaker, which decreases the skill cost by -20. This allows you to negate the negative effect of skill cost from Slayer set. If you're using a weapon other than the sniper, you won't be able to proc this, as your movement speed will still be higher. It's only when I move to the sniper that I'm moving slower. And for the reactor, I don't have a good reactor. You'd want obviously piercing, light, and mounting, chill skill power boost ratio, and singular skill power boost ratio. And then for the additional stats at the bottom, I would like to recommend skill critical hit damage and damage to Colossus. But I've noticed changes to the elemental skill power boost ratio. That's why I'd want to try the chill skill power boost ratio. So I'd test between skill critical hit damage, additional skill damage to Colossus, and chill skill power boost ratio. However, this week you can't really farm for Hailey's reactor. There are no reactors for Hailey this week. However, next week there is one in Fortress, and it's the chill high power singular, and you'll be able to farm missions in Fortress, and this will be able to drop. Now, when I was testing with my friend Kuta, we tested on Devourer, and since Devourer's balancer is weak to burst, the piercing light damage type Crush is actually good for this, as Pierce is better than Crush, Crush is better than Burst, Burst is better than Pierce. So when we look at Devourer, we can see that his knee is the balancer and the icon here is Burst. And when you look at your weapon, next to the name Piercing Light, under it says Sniper Rifle. On the left it shows the icon. This basically indicates that your weapon is Crush. The description is Crush damage type. Damage increases when attacking with a damage type superior to the opponent's damage type, which means attacking with a damage type inferior to an opponent's damage type does not increase the damage. So for our testing, we tested against Devourer, and we had 4 different builds. The first one was Dangerous Ambush and Annihilation, the second one was Dangerous Ambush and Slayer, the third was Walk on a Tightrope and Annihilation, and then the fourth one was Walk a Tightrope with Slayer. So for Dangerous Ambush and Annihilation, we took screenshots when fighting the Devourer, and I'll have screenshots shown throughout the video. But basically, with Dangerous Ambush and Annihilation, with the Force skill, we were hitting 2,984,000 when the enemy was downed. When the enemy was standing, we were hitting 2.5 million. And then we were obviously getting the weapon damage, which is 2.6. And then the additional damage, which you get from your first, which is 1.3. Now to figure out the total damage we get when Devourer is standing, we add the standing skill damage, which is 2.5. The weapon damage, and then the additional damage, which gives us 6.5. And since we're able to shoot 7 shots, this gives us a total of 45 million total damage if we're able to crit every single time. Now obviously we can't crit every single time even with 100%, as the Colossi have crit resistance anyway, but having a 100% crit rate just allows for more consistent damage. Now for Dangerous Ambush, the calculation for this is just simply taking the downed skill damage and removing the standing skill damage, and this gives us the additional damage that we get when he's downed. And since we can't really shoot many times while he's downed anyway, as it takes a couple shots to knock him down, that's why I've written 3. You can also add 4 or 5, but it doesn't make a difference as you'd have to change the other ones as well, which means the damage is still the same. So when he's downed, we gain the extra 1.4 for the 3 shots, and then we simply just take the total standing damage and we add the extra damage from Dangerous Ambush, and this gives us 47 million total damage. We then also tested Dangerous Ambush and Annihilation on the second skill. When he's standing, we got 5 million, and then when he's downed, we get 7 million. Obviously, this is also with a bad reactor, so all of these tests are with a bad reactor. With a better reactor, you'll be dealing even more damage. For the second build, we done Dangerous Ambush and Slayer. With Dangerous Ambush and Slayer, we got, with the downed skill damage, we got 3.4 million, and then the standing skill damage, we got 2.5 million. Weapon damage was 2.3, and then the additional damage was 1.1. So we add all these numbers together. So for the standing, we do the standing and then add the additional ones, which is weapon and additional, and then we times it by 7 because that's the number of shots we do, and that gives 42 million, which is worse than the other one. But then we use Dangerous Ambush. We do the 3.4 minus the 2.5, that gives us 941,000, and we times that by 3 shots, which gives us 2,800,000. And then we take the 42 million and we add the 2.8 million, and that gives us the total damage. Then we also tested Dangerous Ambush and Slayer on the second skill. This is obviously the best one as it has the most skill power. So while he's standing, we deal 6.2 million, and then while he's downed, we proc Dangerous Ambush, which gives 8.5 million. Then we done Walk a Tightrope plus Annihilation. Since there's no Dangerous Ambush, we deal the exact same damage while he's downed and standing. So for the down skill damage, we do 2,060,000, and then for the standing skill damage, we do 2,060,000. They're the exact same number. Then the weapon damage is actually higher, which is the 3,022,000. Then the additional damage is 1.5 million. We then add these numbers together. So we do the skill damage plus the weapon damage plus the additional damage, that gives 6.5 million. Times that by 7, that gives us 46 million total damage. This also means that we don't have to down the enemy, which allows us to just keep firing our shots and have more consistent damage. Walk a Tightrope and Annihilation on the second skill is the exact same for standing and downed. You get 5 million damage. And then for Walk a Tightrope and Slayer, the fourth skill, for me personally, I think this is the best one for the fourth ability, as you deal the most damage, and it's consistent damage if he's downed or standing. So for the down skill damage, it's 2.5 million, and it's the same for standing. The weapon damage is 2.7 million, and the additional damage is 1.3 million. We add the skill damage with the weapon damage and the additional damage, we get 6.6 million. Times that by 7, we get 46,760,000. And then for the second skill, we also done Walk a Tightrope and Slayer. And since we use Slayer, we deal more damage, which means standing and downed, we get 6.2 million. And it's the same number for downed and standing because we don't have Dangerous Ambush. I'll have this entire document linked below. This document goes in depth into explaining the skills, the math behind each test that we've done, and some additional notes. Now obviously the one that deals the most damage is the first one, which is Dangerous Ambush and Annihilation. So on the fourth skill, this deals the most damage, but this is only because we have the enemy downed, which means this requires us to immobilize the enemy to trigger Dangerous Ambush. So it's up to you whichever one you want to do. Dangerous Ambush and Annihilation, the total damage you get at the end is 47 million, but this requires you to down the enemy. Dangerous Ambush and Slayer deals the least damage, so I would not recommend this. I would only recommend this if you were going to be playing on your second skill, as this gives you the most damage on your second skill. And then Walk a Tightrope and Annihilation, this one gives 46 million. And the last one, which in my opinion is the best one, is it gives consistent damage without needing to immobilize the enemy. This gives 46,760,203, and you still deal some damage with your second thanks to the Slayer set. Now if we take 47,060,305 and we take away 46,760,203, we're only losing out on 300,000 damage. This one allows me to shoot the fourth as fast as possible without the need of having the enemy be immobilized. So if we do 300,000 divided by 7, we're only missing 42,857 per shot. So this is the one that I play currently, and in my opinion it's the best one if you're playing fourth ability, and then if you're playing second ability you want to go for Dangerous Ambush and Slayer. But yeah, that's the build. These are the mods. I'm using Slayer set, so MP recovery out of combat, max HP, MP recovery in combat, max MP, defense and MP recovery modifier, and then Slayer processor. This doesn't really matter. The main one that matters is the max MP, MP recovery, and MP recovery, and then MP recovery modifier. These first two are the best you can get, but you can obviously get defense and MP recovery modifier in gold. Then you're obviously going to want to farm a better reactor for piercing light. And then piercing light, you want the base stats that you roll to be bonus firearm attack against Colossus, firearm attack, firearm critical hit damage, and weak point damage. And then these are the mods that I would recommend. You can also switch between the weak point expansion and special sight if you want the burst damage on your first shot. Now we can go test the build on some of the bosses. Obviously I'll be dealing less damage than some people. As my reactor, I'm missing 60% skill power, and the bottom two stats are not the best. So the first boss we can test is Devourer. The skill rotation you want to do is before you load in, you can preload your abilities. So use your 3rd and 4th, then press 3rd and 4th again to cancel it. This allows you to lower your health. Then use your 3rd again. Then use your 4th. And then when the boss spawns in, press your Q, spam it. Then just snipe his shoulder or knee, and then you can just simply kill the enemy. Now for that example I was using the special sight. We can then go back to Albion and switch it with weak point expansion, as we already kill the boss within 4 shots. So we load in, we do 3-4, then 3-4 to lower our health. Then we press 3 to get in the stacks. Then we can just wait inside of our 4th. When the boss spawns in, just spam your 1st to gain the CRYO stacks. And then we just kill him instantly. You'll obviously see that we're dealing less damage after the first shot. And that's only because we're using weak point expansion, which means we only get 1 shot with 140, whereas we could take the plus 30 per shot. It's entirely up to you. And now we can go test pyro. Now we can go do pyro. You should also keep in mind that even if you see lower numbers, you have to also add the additional damage, the weapon damage, and the skill damage. I'm also missing plus 60% skill power, which also affects the 4th. If you found the video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, it really helps the channel a lot. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.